Hello and welcome to the Danielle K Show, you guys. I am so excited. I've had so many amazing guests on the show, and today in my home I have Miss Kelli Musa. So when I saw your Instagram, and immediately I was like, "Hey, well, she's super fit," and then started like going down the rabbit hole and watching some of your videos. And I was like, "Amber, can you reach out and see if we can get Kelli on the show?" Because I just loved your concept around like just mindset on wellness and all these things. And so I'm like, can I pick your brain? Can we do a podcast? And I think it's important to share your knowledge, because I think a lot of times, especially with wellness, and we talked about this before on the show, like you get kind of stuck in your head and set yourself up for your own limitations. And it's like, why do we do that? You know what I mean? So Kelli, welcome. Thank you
so much.
Thank you for being here. Hey, you guys, it's Danielle K. White. Welcome to the Danielle K. White Show. On this podcast, what you can expect is anything from fashion, fitness, hair, and yes, even family. I'm the creator of Natural Vita Real Hair Extensions and Isla Hand-Tied Hair. But what I'm really passionate about is sharing other people's stories, how they went from the pit to the peak, how entrepreneurs build the success that you see online today. So definitely tune into this podcast for a good story and a little bit of fashion and a little bit of hair and beauty mixed in. So tell me, when did this journey start for you? How long have you been inside of like health and wellness?
So I've been in health and wellness for pretty much all my life, as far as the fitness aspect and looking good and taking care of myself. About 15 years ago, I was diagnosed with Epstein-Barr.
Oh, wow.
Epstein-Barr is a form of mono, which we all usually get when we're younger, and it remains in our body. And when it stays in our body, basically what it does is it wreaks havoc on our system.
Wow.
So I went through like a 2-week period where I could not get out of bed. And my doctor was like, "You're fine. You look fine. Your blood work is fine, and you're fine." And I'm like, dude, I'm not fine. I don't feel well, and I'm not fine. So fast forward, I do a deep dive. I start looking into different, methods and how I can actually treat this, because I know I'm not fine. I'm finally diagnosed with Epstein-Barr, and it's been from there. Started going into all this scientific background, put myself back into classes, and I have
what is Epstein-Barr?
So Epstein-Barr is the lingering mono that stays in your system. 98% of the population has Epstein-Barr.
Oh, wow.
It just takes a stressful situation to make it come to life.
Oh, okay.
And once it comes to life, it's very hard.
So it could be triggered by something?
Oh, easily.
Oh, wow. So how old are you when you found out this?
So I was 40 years old.
Okay.
So I had 2 young sons, and basically it was a very frightening diagnosis, because I was like, okay, I have to be at water polo. I have to do all these mom things. And I wasn't able at the time to be able to complete any of those tasks.
Right. And it's crazy too, because I feel like as we get older, and if you feel like something's off, like nothing shows up there, people are like, you're fine, you're fine, you're fine. How did you finally get diagnosed? Through your own research, or did you have a doctor that was like, hey, like we found this? And how does that work?
So fortunately now we have that great thing called the internet.
Yeah.
And so I started doing a deep dive in the internet, and I was like, this is my symptom, and being smart. I do have a scientific background. I do have a degree in biology.
Oh, okay.
And so I do understand all that stuff. And so when I started doing the deep dive, I was like, you know what? I'm finding a functional medicine doctor. Found a functional medicine doctor, worked with her, then mentored underneath her so that I could understand it. And now like I'm the person that is not allowing women to be silenced anymore. Yeah,
because it's like, it's nothing worse than just telling yourself like, oh, it's hormones, it's this and that, and you don't feel right. And you can't, like you said, you don't have energy. So how do you have this diagnosis, like how do you heal yourself? How do you heal your body? I mean, you look like you have tons of energy, you look great. So how did you it's obviously it's not cured, but how does that work?
So it's in remission, basically. Just like, and I hate to use a big C word, but that's when we relate remission to. But you can put Lyme disease, all these crazy autoimmune diseases we see, which this is an autoimmune disease as well. You can put them into remission. And when we do that, what that looks like is basically it's lifestyle changes. It's dietary changes. It's making sure you have a good metabolic assessment and redo your metabolic assessment all the time. Assess yourself metabolically, or have someone that can do that like me for you. And it's also, I'm hugely into peptides, and peptides are life-changing.
How do you assess your metabolic?
So for me, a metabolic assessment is based on nutrition and reactions. So a lot of people just look at nutrition and say, hey, how does your body react?
Yeah.
But let's look at allergic response. Let's get deeper into it. And then when we take allergic response, we even go down a little bit deeper because we can say, okay, now we're looking at raw foods versus cooked foods. And so anything that slows you or causes a reaction in your body, that sets you back.
Okay.
So,
well, it's interesting because I told you I have 4 daughters, and one of my daughters, she's 18. She's always like, Mom, I have a gluten intolerance, or I have this and that. And I'm like, how do you know you have a gluten intolerance? And so I think it's kind of finding out, you do blood work all the time, but it's what does it tell you? Even for me, I feel like I'm very aware, with diet and things, and I listen to my body. I'm like, ooh, okay, that didn't sit well, or oh, this, you know what I mean? But I have never diagnosed myself of gluten intolerant or this or that, and I think it's a tolerance of what your body can take. How do you go about that for yourself when you were diagnosed? What did you change in your lifestyle and your diet and everything?
So, I implemented a lot of biohacking, modalities like red light therapy, infrared sauna before it was all cool and everybody was doing it, cold plunging. And this was all based on, the research and the doctor that I was working with, which was cutting edge, and literally implemented the peptides, which, let me break down peptides because I love
to. When everyone says peptides, it's such a general term now.
Yeah, and it's not general. So protein is a peptide, but it's a longer chain of peptides.
Okay.
So what happens is protein is the outfit we put on. So basically we put the outfit on and that's our protein. Peptides are the accessories. So they make us pop. So what peptides are shorter chain amino acids. So they're smaller pieces of the protein.
Okay.
So instead of being larger and taking longer to find their pathways, they're shorter and they actually know where to go.
Oh, okay.
So when you use a peptide, when we talk about GLP-1s, which are in the news and everywhere, it actually functions in your body the way it is supposed to. It goes that pathway, which makes
So
sense.
Peptide is essentially if your body's missing something. It's it's basically fills it. How do you find out what you're missing? How do you know what peptides to take?
So it's interesting because a lot of it you have to do, and it depends on how in touch with your body you are. And women like us, we're very in touch with our bodies. Anybody that's into fitness and wellness and takes care of themselves, they usually have a little bit more insight into what's going on.
Right.
But for people, generally, there's, an intake process. And part of that is just going on what you're feeling, what do you feel? Are you tired?
Yeah.
And looking at the time, doing cortisol tests, stuff like that we can look at that are general.
Right.
And then we can get really specific with blood work if necessary. But sometimes it's just peptides are less offensive than taking an Advil.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Yeah. That makes sense. It's crazy though, too, because even for something as simple as I'm in tune with my body where I don't drink a lot of caffeine because it makes me all crazy and crash and tired and all these things. And so I think it's you said, you kind of have to listen to your body. How does somebody go about, are you in your program, do you help people find out what their body's missing and what they need? It seems like you're the scientist behind this. I'm I'm asking for a friend. I'm asking for myself.
100%. But you know what? It makes sense because we need to be our own scientists, so to say, or have somebody in our corner to advocate for us in that capacity, because it really is when people talk to me and they're talking about the simplest task or doing an event, and then I have a lot of friends who are powerful CEOs or clients of mine, and they do these events and then they're they crash out for a week after, and I'm like, girl, that's not normal.
Yeah.
We need to look into what is causing that.
Right.
And then we look at blood work and we look at lifestyle, and then they're like, oh yeah, well, I do drink a lot when I go on, when you start breaking
break it down, you're well, that's why.
I call it confessional because it's all of a sudden people, they'll be like, no, I live a healthy lifestyle.
Yeah.
Well, I did drink a bottle of wine. So it's kind of interesting. It's
I would say it's when I would work with my personal trainer and I'd have a shitty weekend and I'd come up Monday to train and she's like, how are the margaritas all weekend? I'm like, damn it, she knows. But also, if you can't be honest with your coach, how are they gonna help you? So it's okay, well, sure, you want to have a bottle of wine, but we're not gonna do that, every other night. We're going to maybe every once a month or whatever it is, for you and your girlfriends. How do you help people in your program? Is it one-on-one coaching, or tell me a little bit about your program?
So yeah, I do a lot of one-on-one currently. There are a lot of stuff that there is a big part of my program that I have been able to make, a one-to-many.
Okay.
Because, a lot of depending on the symptoms and whatnot, that I'm able to reproduce a program in that format that is a little more generalized. Okay. But the intake process is very personal still. And I really love that part of it because for me, if I could be a nonprofit, it was more difficult to become a nonprofit than to be profit.
Yeah.
So if I could be a nonprofit, I would, because so many people need the help, and so many people are misled or confused, or just get bad service. And we're in a trust recession right now, and that even more with, I think, health, and we see what's going on. I'm not political, so I'm not going there. Yeah. But we're in a trust recession,
right? It's interesting too, though. It's like you're told something and you just accept it as like, well, it came from a doctor, so I guess it's true. It's funny, like after my third daughter, I gained almost 70 pounds. I developed a DVT in my. I know people are like, you, because I'm tiny, but I was doing hair a ton, and I ended up getting preeclampsia. So a lot of it was like water retention and things like that. But anyways, I ended up having her 6 weeks early. She was healthy. Everything was great. She was only like 5 pounds. She was tiny, but people would tell me like, don't be so hard on yourself. You're almost 40. Like, it's okay. Like, don't worry about stress about losing the weight. Like, just these stories, And I remember looking in the mirror and I'm like, I don't even recognize myself. And I was like, I remember in that moment, I was like, I don't accept this. And it was just literally flipping that script in my brain, instead of being like, oh yeah, I had a rough pregnancy and I could have like gone into this victim mentality. And I just chose in that moment, I'm like, I do not accept that. And so I think a lot of times we accept stories without actually like considering that that's not a path. Now, don't get me wrong. I worked my ass off to get back in shape. It wasn't like, I wasn't like, oh, I don't accept that story. I was like, okay, I decided to do bikini competitions randomly. And I was like, I'm going to hire a bikini coach who's got her pro card. I went and hired a nutritionist. I just tried to like really educate myself and put in the work. But I think it starts with flipping that script of like, no, I don't accept this. That doesn't mean I'm not going to do the work. It just means like, how do I entertain, if I give it my all, if I do my best, what's going to happen? I think a lot of people stop short in that. And I don't know if it's because they're scared to do the work, but I wanted to like ask you about that, because so many times, especially women as we get older, it's like, oh, well, I can't eat this, because now I'm in my 40s, or I can't eat this, or when you're 50, your hormones really go. Like, how do you help women kind of not accept that story? Not to say they don't have to put in the work, but how do you help them kind of flip that script?
So that's a hard point, because there are a lot of women that are attached to their story. Yeah. And especially, we've all had drama and trauma, and people get stuck in that. Mm-hmm. And that's a huge, trend or path that I see people wanting to hold on to. Right. And, I'm not a psychiatrist, although I play one on TV, it seems like half the time. And I'm sure with hair, the same kind of effect. But, it's really a matter of giving them a new belief system and empowerment, like handing them back the power, saying like, you have the power to make the change. Right. Like, do you want to stay where you are, or do you want to be over here? It's like, you can be here and be miserable and be overweight and get ready to be sick and ill and have all these problems. Or you could step into your power over here and be a completely different person.
A completely different person. Yeah. I think that's amazing to touch on that, because I think it's like choose your hard, but the reality is, in my experience, like it's what the result do you want, right? So you're kind of unhappy here. If you can change your patterns and habits and your belief system, who's to say you wouldn't be happier on the other side? So I think it's important to like tell women, hey, no matter where you're at in your journey of health and fitness, it's like, what do you want it to look like for you? Not physically and mentally, right? Both plays a huge role in it. People ask me all the time, like, what's my workout? What's this? And I'm like, I don't know. What are your goals? I don't know how to give you advice. Are you trying to lose weight? What are you like, what are your goals? So when you are working, do you work specifically with women, or do you work with men and women?
So I really specialize in women. I mean, not that I don't have knowledge for men. Yeah. It's just kind of like, I really wanted to dial it in. And because I know the pain process, and like you do too, it's so relatable. And I feel like I know a woman's body. Yeah. You know what I mean? And when some of these doctors that are male and they just, the hormone thing gets me, and that's a whole nother tangent, but they stick these pellets in women and they just use a computer that calculates out, what you're supposed to have and stuff like that. That's where, someone like myself comes in and I'm you, you know what I mean? I'm you, and I'm going to learn more about you in the same aspect as I would myself.
Yeah.
And I think that makes a big difference.
It's funny. It's interesting too, because as we age, everyone tells me like, oh, your metabolism slows down, or your hormones change. Like, how do you talk to women specifically on that? Because I always tell people, like, if I'm training for a show, I'm on a pretty strict diet, but like day to day, I'm like, I might have a piece of pizza every once in a while. I might have the cookie. I'm not as strict on my diet. It's more of like flexible macros. So how do you help women who they're in this space where they don't even know where to start, and they're getting all these stories from doctors about hormones? You're like, oh, I could go off on that. Like, talk to us about it. Go off on it for a little bit.
Yeah. So the problem is that hormones is now a new big generalization. It's also a monetization for many doctors, where they don't want to look at the root cause. And we can look at, before we address hormones, let's look at what's causing the depletion. And there's ways of doing that. And there's a lot of it's our diet. Our food now is horrible.
Crap.
Yeah. We can't even get good food. It's like you have to source it. And even when you source it, you don't even,
you never know.
Yeah. There's, we won't go through there, but, so the doctors themselves, it's kind of like, for me people want that quick fix, put that pellet in me and I'm going to be done. And it's like, no, let's back it up. Let's look at your cortisol. Let's look at what's triggering. Let's look at why your testosterone is not converting. There's so many things involved. That's just not like hormones.
Yeah.
You know, it's just like, okay, I'll have pizza or whatever. Yeah. It's not that easy.
Right.
So it's really a matter of like taking that all apart, deconstructing it, and then reverse engineering it from the way a doctor would do it.
Yeah, I love it. It's such a, do you find it's like a customized approach with everybody, just seeing like what they're lacking and that kind of thing?
I feel like for the most part it is. And like I start people out soft, instead of like, I'm not a hard sell. I don't ever want to be a hard sell. I help women that are mostly, high achievers, high performers, and they're pretty good at following my advice because they don't want to feel that way. And of course, if you feel better and you look better, you know what happens? You perform better.
Yeah.
You know how you perform better? You make more money.
Right.
I mean, there's so many things that come with it. You're alone. Change these habits. And like, not only when you look better and you feel better and you walk in the room, you sparkle, you meet that person because you radiate that energy.
Right.
And that energy comes from within.
It's funny. My husband, he's always been like pretty fit. And it was actually 2 years ago, almost exactly 2 years ago. And I had been doing all the fitness stuff. And he watched me not just transform physically, but same thing. He's like, you just enter a room different. Like as I speak on stages with him and stuff, he's like, you're just more certain. I'm like, yeah, you feel different, And so I was telling him, we were literally in Miami 2 years ago. We were sitting down and I'm like, why don't you start lifting weights and do a competition with me, kind of like joking around. And he's like, no. And I'm like, no, come on. I made him sign on a napkin that he would do a show. And for me, it was so fun to watch him not just transform physically, but like how he carried himself. He's like, I always felt powerful, but like now this feels like me. And so I love that about any kind of transformation, is like you almost get to see the true person show up. You're like, there you are. Like, I knew you for the last 5 years, but now this person I see today, like you said, they have like that sparkle. They have that like certainty and that confidence. It's like they're finally comfortable in their own skin. So, and I do believe like health and wellness, it's not, like you said, it's not like one quick, like people ask me all the time, what are you doing? I'm like, well, I'm doing all the things. I'm like, I'll do the light therapy. I have my trainer. I eat healthy. It's like, I take my vitamins. It's like any little hack that I can get my hands on, I'm like, I'll try it and see if I notice a difference, And I do believe it's all the little things. Do you find mostly you have your success with the peptides? I'm sure it's like everything. I'm sure you eat great, working out, like all of it.
It's a full, like you're saying, it's the full spectrum. Like one thing doesn't work well without the other.
Right.
I mean, of course, if you add one thing and you haven't done it, and it's a good thing for you in anywhere in life, it's going to produce good results.
Right.
But now imagine if you take that and you put that together and you really create something spectacular, because what you're feeling now is like next level, like you're saying with your husband, and it's like that alone is life-changing. And when people actually, but that's commitment.
Yeah.
And the commitment part is always seems to be the hardest part for people.
Yeah. Well, I do. I think it's the commitment to yourself, because you have these excuses, but the excuses is, oh, you know, I have slow metabolism, this and that. And it's like, you're just saying that so you don't have to put in the work. And so I find myself a lot of times when I have excuses in my life, I'm like, no, I'm just scared of the work on the other side, you know? And then there's also like the fear of failure when you start the work, but it's like, well, how are you already going into that with that mindset? Why don't you just give it your all and see what's going to happen? You know, watch yourself transform. So it's just interesting. So were you always into health and wellness, or was it when you were 40 and you got diagnosed that you just had to figure out your own body and then you were like, I can help other women? Is that how you started down this path? Was just then, or?
So interesting enough, you know, I have always been a fitness person.
Okay.
I competed when my kids were really little, and then I realized I was never going to do that again because it was just so unhealthy.
Oh, okay.
You know, I mean, like, and I did a fitness competition, so I didn't.
Okay.
I don't get much bigger than this. I stay like this year round, but just when you carb deplete like that, you just look at your kid, and you're like, shut up. You know, it's like, okay, I'm not. I don't want to be that person. I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
So I've been working out for all of my life, way back to like step classes, and then I actually opened group fitness training studios for quite a while before I moved to California, which was that was about 12 years ago. And I was the only link that wasn't Orange Theory or CrossFit. So before all these others popped up, I was very, you know, like new wave as far as like having the only thing. I got injured CrossFitting, and I did. I love Ellen, but I do not like Orange Theory. And so I was the missing link. So that kind of started and propelled me. And I got to see how many women were suffering. And then with my own journey, it kind of just compiled it to where I got to the point of like, okay, this is my mission. This is my path. I've always been an entrepreneur. So I just looked at this from my entrepreneurial state of mind and how could I make this a business, and actually with my own health in mind too, have my mission statement be for all women.
So you've always been into fitness then? It was just part of your life?
I was a gymnast when I was younger, and I just got the taste of being active, and I loved it, you know, and to me, it was like everybody else in college was like partying. I remember once in a while on a weekend, I would try that, and I'd be like,
you're like, it's not for me.
The recovery, and you feel terrible, and you feel guilty, and all the stuff that goes along with it is just not worth me. No.
It's interesting too, though. You have a new program, and it's called, what is it called? I'm gonna let you share.
Yeah, so it's an acronym, but it's actually Unfuck Your Energy.
Unfuck Your Energy. But I love that though, because honestly, I think that a lot of women specifically, they are doing everything they know. They just don't know are peptides available. They just don't know I'm doing all these crazy HIIT workouts and not getting the results that I want. They just don't know, right? And so they, again, tell themselves like, it's not possible. I'm already working out, 6 days a week, and I think I'm eating perfectly. But they don't know. They need to find a coach or an expert and really submit to the game. I kind of felt like that's what I had to do. Like when I went through my whole weight loss journey after my third baby, I was just like, when I hired my first nutritionist, like they literally were like, you're not eating enough and you need to eat da-da-da-da. And I was like, what? I had no idea though. So I think it's so important to have people like you on the show so that you can tell women like, no, it is possible. And everything you're doing might be, like, I hate to say wrong, but if you're not giving the results that you want, why not hire a coach to give you a better plan? But I feel like for women, it takes a level of like submitting to the plan. Like I remember literally when my nutritionist like hands me the plan, I'm like, oh, I can't eat that. I'll just get bigger. Like that's what I told myself. I was like, oh, you're silly. And she's like, Danielle, give me 2 weeks. She's like, give me 2 weeks. I'm like, okay. Cause I was like eating not enough food at all. And then she's like, give me 2 weeks. And so then all of a sudden I go on her plan, and within 2 weeks, I'm like dropping the rest of my baby weight. And I was like, how is this even possible? But I didn't know. And so it's important for women to understand, like if you're struggling with your wellness, that you need to hire an expert. And I'm sure that's how you feel. Like you almost have to pay it forward. You're like, I need to show women that there is another path. You know what I mean?
And I made the title more disruptive because I'm kind of weeding out in the title of people that really don't want to commit. In other words, I'm just saying to you, like, listen, I am.
Yeah, I'm not your coach.
Yeah,
That. Yeah,
this is we don't BS. I'm a straight shooter, and that's what you're going to get from me.
Right.
And it's tough love to some degree because you're going to get the truth. You're going to get the diet, and you're going to say to me, "Oh, I can't eat that much." I hear that all the time.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you know what? If you record or take a piece of paper, if you don't want to do it on your phone, take a pen and paper, write down every time you take a bite of something. And then let's talk about you not eating so much.
I know. The food journal is real.
Yeah, it's a real thing. And I'm like, and lying is real. And I hate the fact that people lie to themselves. It's not that they actually think, like one of the most Googled terms I looked up was like, is taking a bite of someone else's food have calories? It's like, that's like,
you're like, yes, you put it in your mouth and you ate it.
People are Googling that. No, it belongs to someone else. You know what I mean? And that's where it gets really crazy.
Yeah. Well, that is a big deal though. I will tell you, I remember that my trainer at one point was like, same thing. She's like, food journal. Like you take a handful of strawberries. I'm always snacking because I have kids, I'm like, oh, a Fruit Loop with this. They're like a strawberry. So for a week, she had me track and I was eating an additional like 600 calories of like the stupidest things ever. I'm like, I had a half a bag of Cheetos and I had a handful of straw. And she was like, yeah. And you're telling me that you're not eating enough, but you have like 400 or 500 calories of straight shit. It's like, oh, so in my mind, I'm like thinking like I'm having to sacrifice only to realize I'm like not being aware. Right. So I think there's like a level of awareness for women too. So that it can be like, oh, I always joke around with my husband because he's like he loves like bars. I'm like, why don't you just make yourself another meal? I'm like the extra shit you're eating right now. Why don't you just go grab one of your pre-made meals and like warm it up? And he's like, oh yeah, that's true. I should. But it's retraining your mind. Honestly, it's just adopting like better habits and patterns. And it's hard too, because we're all human. So it's kind of like we start to slip and then it's like, okay, that was a fun vacation. And you kind of got to turn around and come back in. So with this new program that you have, tell me, how do people find out about it? How do they join? Is it like a mastermind or what is it?
So it's a 12-week course.
Okay.
And basically what I do is I break it down into different components.
Okay.
So, but I do give you a lot of quick wins. So that's the cool thing is like a lot of programs they want you to like dedicate this and you have to do, of course, anything takes dedication because if you don't dedicate, then you're not going to maintain.
Right.
Also, one thing that I found like with all my clients I work with that works amazing is that I will work with you one-on-one until you get those results. Okay. So like, it's kind of like some people are like, I'm going to do this because I don't want her breathing down my neck.
Yeah.
I want to get rid of her. But most people, I mean, we always, it's an ongoing process because most people keep me on, after the program's over, they retain me and, just to be for accountability or whether they want still programming. So the program itself is a 12-week program. Okay. You're going to see some quick wins, energy wise, because that's one of the biggest things I hear.
I know. Yeah.
The crash. I mean, I deal with it and I do everything right, but I know how to like talk myself out of it. I know how to like recharge and a lot of it's breath work. I don't just look over the natural things we can do because there's so many things that are free and available to us that we just are like, okay, we don't really.
I would agree with you. It's so funny because if ever I'm like tired or whatever, I'm amazed like a 10-minute lay down in the sun, how it gives you like a boost of energy. And there was like a period where I think it was like in my 30s. I was like drinking like caffeine all day, every day, like as a hairstylist. So I don't think I'd eat all day and I was just on caffeine. I was always tired. And then I'm like, well, this is dumb. Now I hardly ever drink caffeine at all. And I have more energy than I've ever had. But like little things like that, I love you said like quick wins. Like people want a magic pill and you're like, is it too easy to tell you like just sit down for 10 minutes and meditate or do some breath work or go sit out in the sun for 5 minutes? They almost think that it's like, oh, that's not going to work. It's too easy. Right. So do you find like little things like that? Like you said, like breath work, little things like on a daily consistent effort helps a ton.
Oh my, it's life-changing. When you learn how to box breathe, like I can be having like the worst day. And I have two 20, I call them man boys.
Oh no.
Because they're gorgeous and they have gorgeous girlfriends, which cause gorgeous problems, a little chaotic, but it's like, I can box breathe and it's amazing. And when you do it like a neural reset like that, and it actually works with.
What's box breathing?
So box breathing is you inhale for 4 breaths.
Okay.
You hold it. If you envision a box, like you think about bringing the air in, holding it, and then releasing it.
Okay.
And then you bring it back in, hold, and release, and you just cycle it. And it's amazing what it does for the vagus nerve. It's like, it's the simplest,
Does it help with like anxiety or give you energy? I feel like I'm pretty calm, but like I have 4 kids and I have toddlers and teenagers. And there's sometimes I'm like, mommy's going to go put herself on timeout because it's like, I get agitated with all the, like the noise and like stuff, So for me, I'm like, I usually just literally go upstairs and like just calm down and like have no noise and stuff. So I think like probably something, my husband's always like, you should learn breath work. I don't really know a lot of about it, but
yeah, we can work on that.
I know
there's so many easy, like there's breathing's easy, going out for a walk. I mean, like people underrate the walk. Like a walk is great. Throw on a weighted vest and go rucking, go for a weighted walk. Or there's so many options that we have that are so easy and such quick fixes.
Right.
And, for most of my women that works and that is available. And for most of my women, but when we hit some of these women that are extremely overweight, then we're dealing with a whole different animal, and it's a different approach. But my main business is powerful women who usually have their acts together as far as in the boardroom, and they know what works as far as a business. And so when you plug into someone's logical brain in a business plan, I'm very sneaky. When you plug it in, when it looks like it's business oriented and it's plugged in the same way they would schedule their work day, it all of a sudden it snaps and it clicks and it.
What does your regular day look like? What are some of the things you do?
All right, so that could be scary.
I was like,
I'm an overachiever.
Okay.
So like,
you're like a 4 a.m. waker upper.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely not. I came from a family of vampires, I think, because I am not a 4 a.m. waker upper, but I am. I get up at like 7.
Okay.
All right, and then I do my circadian rhythm. Like I go outside, blue light, walk, grab one of the dogs, take them for a walk. Come back. I usually answer emails. I drink mushroom coffee with a little bit of regular coffee in it. And then I'll go into the sauna.
Okay.
And then from the sauna, I'll go do red light. From the red light, I'll do a quick cold plunge.
You do all that every day?
Every day.
How long does that take?
So I only do 20 minutes in the sauna.
Okay.
I try to double the sauna and red light together. So sometimes I'll throw the red light in the sauna. Otherwise, I spend like 15 minutes in front of the red light. Cold plunge is like, I'm going to lie and say a minute.
That's painful.
Yeah, it is. But I keep mine at like 50.
Okay.
So it's not, a lot of these places keep it. There's no reason
to keep it that
step
cold
in at 30.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. There's no scientific research that shows that
you need to be in that much pain.
Yeah. It hurts.
It does. I did it one time and I think I made it 30 seconds.
Yeah.
And I was done. I've never done it again.
And you that's like, you should get an award for that.
Yeah.
Because that was
rough.
amazing.
Yeah.
And then I go work out.
Okay.
And so then I get my workout in, which usually I'm a very huge fan of weightlifting. I used to be I can switch because I love high intensity training because that just like I love
it's
the burpees.
Fun mentally, yeah.
That for me. But if I go for a good heavy lift that like makes me really challenges me, then that's really satisfying. Super satisfying.
I swear by lifting. I mean, I just didn't get into it till I started doing like the competitions, and I was like, wow, I didn't know body composition was a thing. And I was like super addicted to like HIIT workouts, not getting the results I wanted. And I started lifting weights. I was like, oh wow, I have muscles. Like I had no idea, it was one of those things. So your morning routine's pretty stacked. But I have to ask this too, because I feel like you're probably very productive and your morning probably sets up the whole rest of your day. 100%. You know what I mean? I think that's what people don't understand, because I hear it a ton too, or I don't have time. And I'm like, you don't have time to not incorporate these habits into your morning. And like for me, I don't do all the plunging and the things you do, but I have my routine, where it's like I wake up, I have a little bit of my coffee, then I go for a 15-minute walk almost every day. Then I'll go do like my weights or whatever I'm training for the day. But sometimes my morning, like I don't get started with my day till 11, but I am very productive from then till the rest of the day, because I kind of have this time it helps me. Like if you don't take care of your body, like you're just going to fall apart. And what's the point of like making the money and being successful if your body's falling apart in the process? So I just think that like people can't afford to not take the time to put these into their lives. I can't commit to the cold plunge, but I do the red light every now and again. But do you have all that equipment in your house?
Yes.
Oh, you do?
Well, because it makes it easier.
Yeah.
I was doing my jumps. I don't work out at home though. I actually go to like a group fitness class or I go to the gym because I have a coach every now and then. But sometimes I'm like, depending on my schedule, like sometimes I can't commit to an exact time for that. But I'm very committed to showing up. And that's the thing. Show up for yourself.
Yeah.
It's life changing when you actually just like look and like we show up for our kids. We show up, or at least I hope you guys show up for your kids. We show up for our kids. We show up for our jobs.
Right.
We show up for, think of other things that in life we show up for. And sometimes, especially as mothers.
Yeah, it's the mom guilt.
Yeah, we overlook showing up for ourselves.
Yeah. I can't remember who I was talking to, but I was like, for me, like mom guilt is an excuse not to put in the work. And when I reframed it that way in my head, I was like, oh shit. So now like for me, even when I don't want to go to the gym, I'm like, no, I committed. So it's like some days you're going to have gym workouts or whatever, you're like, I smashed it. And some days you're like, you know what? The power really is in that consistency too. If I get too far off the path, it's so much harder to get back in good patterns and behaviors. And it's funny too, because I'll be like, oh, I'm going to stop taking my vitamins or I'm going to stop doing this. And then like 3 months goes by and I'm like, why don't I feel like me? Why am I sad? Why am I tired? You know what I mean? So it's all these little things that you said, like, I think women, if they realized that taking this time for themselves, you're going to be a better mom. You're going to feel better about yourself. And so it's like, I've looked in my early 20s when I had my first 2 kids, I like felt all the mom guilt. And then when I had 2 more later in life, I told my husband, I was like, I'm doing it different this time. I'm like, I had 2 more later in life, but I'm going to do it different this time. So I think it's important that you touched on that. It's just like, it's making that commitment to yourself. Like we put so much into other people, work, family, kids, husbands, but like you need to take care of yourself, or how are you going to take care of your kids?
And that is the whole thing, is like, is our longevity and health is like, if we don't maintain our health, then we're looking at shorter life periods and diseases and things that could happen. And one of the most interesting things that I think a lot of people overlook and that you kind of just touched on is like muscle. Okay, so muscle's an organ. Right. Like we talk heart, lungs, liver. You never go to your doctor and he doesn't say, well, your quality of muscle isn't good and that's what's causing.
Oh, yeah.
Nobody ever uses that as an organ. But that's the biggest organ in our body. And where don't we have muscle? Muscle moves everything. Yeah. And it's so overlooked as being, an important organ.
It's funny too, because when I tell people I'm little, but I can lift pretty heavy, and people will like ask me all the time, like, are you going to get bulky? I'm like, do you know how many chickens I would have to sacrifice to get bulky? I'm like, there's a lot more to it. I'm like, if anything, like lifting weights, I agree with you. Like everybody who gets older that lifts weights, they look better. Like my husband, now that he like did his whole body transformation, I'm like, okay, I didn't realize like you were starting to look older. Now he looks younger. Because
you're hot.
Yeah, I was like, what in the world? Don't get too hot on me. But it's true. I think that women like they need to not be afraid of getting bulky. Do you hear that a lot? Like, I don't want to get bulky.
Or they'll say, well, I don't want to be as big as you. And I'm like, girl, this is 20 years.
Yeah,
of
exactly.
lifting.
You're like, do you know how long I've been doing this?
Yeah. Or getting bulky. It's like, okay, well, like talk to every bodybuilder that would love to gain 5 pounds of muscle. Yeah. When they tell, I've gained 5 pounds and it's muscle. No, it's not muscle.
There's no way you put on 5 pounds of muscle in 2 months.
Yeah. Even most people say like in a week, I have to cut back. And it's no. And it's like, it's interesting because, for every gram of carb, it holds like 2.5 ounces of water.
I know.
So it's like when people don't calculate that into it, like, well, I've been eating a little bit more carbs because I'm working out. Like, no, girl, stick to the diet.
Yes.
Stick to the nutrition plan. Stick to everything I told you, and you will have success.
It's funny too, because I love that you touched base on that, because water retention is real. Or like, say you have a heavy leg day, you're going to be a little bit inflamed. And then you get on the scale and you're like, oh my God, it's because I had a bite of that cookie last night. And you're like, no, it's because you did legs and your body's inflamed. And now you think you need to starve yourself for 3 days. But it's the only reason I know that is again, in my early 30s, I kind of went through that and I was like, what is going on? And then I found like, oh, it doesn't actually have to mentally be that hard, right? And I think it's important to touch base on like, no, just follow the plan and get back on track. That's what my last trainer who helped me a ton, she'd always be like, I'd go on vacations and just have fun, and I'd come back and I'd be like, I think I'm gonna do a cleanse. And she's like, you're not going to do a cleanse. I'm like, why? And she's like, no, just get back on track. I promise you, stay consistent. She's like, you didn't gain 10 pounds in Hawaii. She's like, this is water weight. She's like, you're fine. And then literally like 3 days later, I'd be like, oh yeah, you're right. I'm back. It's just, inflammation or water weight and all these things. But we get in our head about it as women, So what advice do you give to women who are like kind of like at that level where they want to see results, but they're almost holding themselves back from seeing those results? How do you help them?
So kind of with the same kind of clarity in the sense of like, don't do the cleanse because it's not sustainable.
Right.
Let's find a program that's sustainable. Do not get on that scale every day because it's going to ruin you. Do not even get on it once a week. Try to get on it once every 2 weeks. And actually even better, once a month.
Right.
Judge how your clothing is fitting you, because that's where the real truth is. It's
right.
Like, and realistically, just be honest. Be honest to yourself. Be honest to me. Be honest to your program. Be honest, just like you would in life, you want someone to be honest to you.
Right.
Honesty is like as ethereal in fitness and wellness as it is anywhere else.
Right. I love that you're touching base on that too, though, because I feel like if you're not honest, then you're just lying to yourself. And you're like, well, you're holding yourself back to get the results or feel the way that you want to be because you won't even be honest with yourself, And it's interesting because you can find people who they don't like the space that they're in, but then they'll still keep doing those lies. So that's where it's like hard, where it's like, how can I shift them? But I'm sure even for you, like you want to work with people who are ready for that change. They're all ready to commit, because that's probably like once they're in that painful place, then maybe they're more likely to be honest and kind of stick to the plan. So it's just crazy I think that women are harder on themselves than men. I mean, I can't speak for guys, but I feel like women, it's such a mental shift that you just have to decide what you want for you. And I would say when you feel good, at least for me in the last 5 years, taking on health a little bit more serious, I've had more energy. I feel like I'm with my kids more, with my husband more. So I see the long-term play in it. And I even think too, you can tell when people take care of themselves, like they start to look younger. Like they literally, I've had friends, I'm like, you're like reverse aging. And they're like, oh, I decided to change X, Y, and Z and do this and this and this. And it's like, it's just crazy what can be possible. And all starts with just like giving ourselves permission to kind of go. So where can people, if people want to find out more, if they want to coach with you directly, can they? How does that work?
So they coach with me directly is like, I do a lot of tele-wellness.
Okay.
So, but the best place, I hang out on Instagram all day long. Okay. So you can always find me at JUS, it's JUSKELLI wellness.
Okay.
I had Kelli Musa, but for some reason it's me, but I can't access it. So
it's like one you created forever going forgot or something?
I think so, because unless somebody did it
it's for me. It's your twin somewhere.
You never know. You never know with those things because it's so. And then also I'm about to launch the program and my new website, which is going to be fire. So basically either Instagram and I'm always, I put this out there. I know people are like, why are you doing this? But text me. It's 561-866-3800. I love a good text message. I love to get engaged especially for people that are ready and willing. Yeah. And you want to do the work. You're gonna
kick their ass.
Yeah, let's go. Let's go.
All right, you guys, you heard it from Kelli. If you need a good ass kick, she's your girl. And you know what? Just like talking to you, I can tell you're very well educated. And like I know a lot, but I always say like I'm not an expert. Like people ask me stuff all the time on health and fitness and all this, and I tell them, hey, this works for me, but honestly, go hire a professional. Like I'm a firm believer in that. So you guys, if you need help in this space, mentally you're just not doing well, and you want to shift that perspective. I feel like you'd be a great person because you have a ton of knowledge and you help women not just like drop the weight, sure, but like let's mentally overcome whatever it is they're dealing with to adopt good habits, patterns, and behaviors, right? Yes. So thank you so much for being on the show. Again, you guys can text Kelli. She just gave you guys her full cell phone number. I'm like, I got it now, so I'm just going to text you and be like, hey, Kelli, here's my goals. Where are we going?
Let's go.
So thank you so much for being on the show, you guys. If you're listening to this and you're like, you know what? I think my friend would really benefit from that. That's what I ask. Like the podcasts are all about sharing. So if you're listening to this, you resonate, you have a friend that you think needs help with any of the topics that we're talking about, share it with your friends and make sure to tune in every single week to hear more stories just like Kelli, because you never know. Like everybody has their expertise and you never know who it's going to impact and who it's going to help. So you guys, thank you so much again for tuning into the Danielle K. White Show. We'll see you on another episode next week.